it's very classic 80s, 90s FM radio. It really does feel like you're listening to your favorite station back at home.
The FIZZ Radio, thefizzradio.com.
If you are a listener to the FIZZ Radio, first of all, thank you so much for tuning in. You know we're all about the retro pop and classic alternative from the end of the millennium. I talk about the CDs from Hurricane Andrew's colossal CD collection, and this is the guy. FIZZ fans, Hurricane Andrew, FIZZ fans,
Hey,
welcome.
I'm so glad to finally talk to y'all because I've been hearing my name on our station, but I'm looking forward to getting my voice out there a little bit more. I've been doing some voice track recording, getting my basement studio set up. I still haven't managed to wrangle all the CDs back in order. We just moved here, so I'm looking forward to having my CD collection back in a sortable space, but it's lovely to be able to hear it on a regular basis on our very own radio station.
Get you on the air soon. Looking forward
sure.
to that. So, yeah, we talk about the massive CD collection. Give me a sense of scale. I've been ripping CDs for like the past 6 months, 8 months, and still have some more to import into the radio station, into the Fizz. But dang, man, that's a lot of music.
Well, it started when obviously I was in college radio because I had been just absolutely enamored with pop music, especially in the 80s when I went to school in the 1900s, back in the days of yore when we walked to school uphill both ways. I had a record player, which everybody did back in those days, and my brother, who's an amazing musician, by the way, was the first in our family to have a CD player in the house. And I'll tell you, I was more than a little jealous. So when I had finally gotten my own CD player, it was really fun to be able to just kind of go crazy down at the local music land. Some people remember it as Sam Goody's, or a couple of our great local record stores. And so I'd pick up stuff by Thomas Dolby and Howard Jones. And this was, of course, you were on the radio a little bit after this. This was still a time when people would record audio off of the radio to hear their favorite songs.
Making the mixtapes.
Yeah, making mixtapes for your friends. I still make them. They're called playlists, but it's kind of the same thing, really. Only it took a lot more work. I remember working at Radio Shack. Yes, you got questions, we got answers. That's how it went. And getting enough money to get my first 2-tape recording external mixer so that I could transfer tapes and copy tapes, which was a really big deal when you're trying to make mixtapes. You want to make sure that you have one to hand to that person that you like and keep one for yourself so you can listen to the same tracks in the same order. But yeah, in the 80s, music was its own language. If you had a band that you loved, you could talk to somebody who you didn't know, but if you both acknowledged that, hey, you like REM? I like REM. Or, hey, you like this weird They Might Be Giants? Well, I like They Might Be Giants. And you could go on a full conversation about the stuff that's made of. So I've just adored music since I was a kid, listen to my dad play records on his stereo, and I'm so excited now to share this CD collection with the listeners here on the Fizz.
You were in college when you were collecting these CDs, early, or I guess mid to late 80s, into the 90s and into the 2000s.
Yeah, I went to college in 1991 was my freshman year. I started at Luther College, and I got on the radio there at KWLC, 1240 AM, 1,000 watts of pure monaural power.
Flame throwing mono.
It was the tower was at the bottom of a hill and the gorge that was cut out by the upper Iowa River. So as soon as you went to the top of the hill, you could get KWLC no more. It was almost exclusively on the campus there, but it was a blast. Friday nights was our time to prowl and play the music that got people up and ready to go out.
That's great. Yeah. So the late 80s into the 90s is about the time that I was working in radio.
Mm-hmm.
And so that time frame sort of matches up with the time that you were buying the music. So the music you were buying and building your CD collection at that time was the stuff that I was playing when I was working at radio stations. I remember, from I wanted to be in radio since the 5th grade and dreamt about being on my high school had a radio station back in the day. And we would broadcast over the PA system into the commons after school for an hour or two. But, it didn't actually broadcast, but it was a great experience. That we retrofitted a janitor's closet with a makeshift studio and had a bunch of albums, stacked up against the wall and a mixing board and a microphone, and we could play DJ. And of course, we would DJ the school sock hops after the football games on Friday nights. So that was, sort of my first experience as a high school kid, actually being a radio personality. And then, in college, then you talk about college radio and what an experience. I was on WWSP 90 FM in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. At that time, 3,000 watts.
The home of Point Beer.
Stereo FM. That is true. And the world's largest trivia contest on that was the big fundraiser for 90 FM. But then worked at WSPT, my local commercial station, my first radio job, did overnights. And from there, got a job at a station in Olympia, Washington.
First of all,
KQ,
very, very far away. What was it
traveled
again?
across the country, yeah. KQ 92, AM stereo. And I did the night show. If you are familiar with how radio works, AM is not like FM. AM will bounce off the atmosphere and stuff like that. And high-power AM radio stations can be heard around the world because of the way the radio waves. It's all the technical engineering junk that I know this much about. But
Yeah.
but that's
Amplitude versus frequency. That's the difference between
right.
AM and FM.
So that station was not a high power station. It was a low power station south of Seattle. So at night we had to power down, and the transmitter was in a building a few miles from the studio. When we would power down at night, it was such low power that I couldn't even hear the station, the air signal at the studio. That's how low the power was in the wintertime when we would power down. But it was a good experience. Was there for a little over a year. This was maybe 88 to 89. And then in 89, 90, I got a job in Madison, Wisconsin to sign on a top 40 FM, the Fox, WTFX, 94.1 the Fox.
Listener, the Fox was fantastic. You would hear, some of the early grunge, some of the not glam metal, but like metal, 80s metal. You'd hear just a really good selection of music on the Fox. That was a good station.
We had a lot of fun, and it was brand new, and we kind of did what we wanted to do and sort of made it up as we went along. But it didn't last long, and about 18 months later, they switched formats, and I ended up traveling south. That's when I came to Rockford and, did the night show as music director at WZOK, 97 ZOK.
And that's where we met.
That's where we met.
Yep. So I was a summer intern at WZOK while you were there. I was mostly working for the morning show, which was run by Eric Ferguson, who went into Chicago, gained some fame there, and then some infamy. I'm not going to go into, but I tell you what, when he was in Rockford, it was really fun to work for him. I mean, we had like muffin deliveries. There was a big muffin contest, so I would go pick up a tray of muffins and a bunch of coffee to bring to a local company. He ran me through a car wash in the trunk of Ranger Rick's car, if you can remember. I did a live broadcast from inside an octopus car wash. I won't ever forget that. We did the old honk if you roll your TP over the top and honk twice if it's over the back. All of the gimmicks, all of the weird stuff. It was a fun time. I mean, I learned an awful lot. I think the most infamous thing that I did was at the very end of my intern, ZOK was going through a complete shift. There was a new program manager. People were getting fired. It was really catastrophic. And whoever the program manager was, who was probably going to be let go like within a week or two of the end of the summer, said, "Oh, you're going to a family reunion? Well, why don't you just go and keep going and have a good time, because I don't know where you're going to come back to." So we went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where I called into the station collect to give a weather report from Jackson. I was like, they can't fire me. They never paid me anything, and it's only going to be a good radio bit. So it was really fun to do. After college, I started working at a little radio station here called WBEL, and that was the moldiest of moldy oldies. I'm talking, it was Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra, and yeah, it was. I You had to be 75 or older to listen to that station, and it was all run on automation. So I would go in on a Sunday after my shift at Radio Shack. I would record weather and news, and then I would sit there until it was time to turn the directional antenna, because it was 1380, I think is what the AM station was. And then I'd go home. And it was no fun because there was no one ever there. It was just me the whole time. And I was like, this isn't what I signed up for. So I got out of it. But that kind of brings us to, over the years, I kept collecting CDs. And then I met a wife who is awesome, the Lady Melissa, Scary Bradshaw, roller derby queen herself.
Yeah.
And when we married, we merged our CD collection, and now there are thousands and thousands of CDs, and they're currently in cardboard boxes, but we'll make sure that we can get some CDs on display, and we'll be able to share our progress as we go along. So hit that donate button. But between the two of us, what, 3,000 CDs? I know I brought you 5 shipping
5 or 6
boxes.
moving boxes, yeah, full of CDs. And I mean, I had a few of my own. Nothing like your collection, but adding to what you brought to the table with all of your CDs. But we've got a huge collection on the Fizz. Great selection, I think, a good rotation of, we call it retro pop and classic alternative. It's sort of the, just describe what the rotations are. We've got the retro pop, which is the stuff you would have heard if you grew up in the late 80s, 90s. If you were of that era, this is the stuff you would have heard on the radio, the stuff that I would have played when I was working in radio, and the stuff that you would have bought at, at the record stores. Genesis, I know, is one of your favorites.
Genesis is so okay. I'm a nerd because I was a huge Genesis fan in my teens and tweens. When you're 13 or 14 and you're listening to the self-titled album with the little plastic toys on the front of it, and you're reading Stephen King in the middle of the 1980s, I am a page out of the book of Stranger Things. As soon as that came out, you knew that was where I was going to live. They got me, but yeah. So it's alternative and progressive music. It is the oddities that you would only hear a little bit, but you would love, and then it's the big hooky stuff. My wife brought the boy bands to the table. So if you're hearing NSYNC or New Kids on the Block, which is her favorite band, you're hearing some of Melissa's songs as well. But it's soundtracks. It's the things that put you right back into your middle school, your high school, that malaise that happens to everyone after college. Those few years when you're like, back in college, everyone was the same age within a year or two, and now I'm in the real world, and I don't see any one of my peers hardly anywhere. And so, we all go through those experiences, and I think that angsty music of the '90s kind of brings brings my headspace back there, anyways.
Kind of that, grungy plaid era of the 90s. Personally, I grew up in the 80s, and so that's kind of where, as a personal reference, it's for me that touch point is the music of the 80s. But again, I played the music into the 90s because that's when I was working in radio, and so that holds a spot for me as well. But the music that we play on the Fizz spans that era. It's the end of the millennium, and it fits really well.
It's that era from like Pearl Jam through like Ben Folds into Silver Sun Pickups. I mean, we're spanning a lot of generations of pretty much guitar fronted pop music. So
I would say yeah. So the Fizz is not a sort of a decades station. It's not that. It's if you grew up in this era at the end of the millennium, and this is the sort of the lifestyle that we're sort of hearkening back to, that we're reminiscing about.
It's a nostalgia station for people who don't want to admit that they like nostalgia.
We're not old
I
enough to reminisce.
Yeah, I mean, we like retelling our stories. We like telling the times that when we were young and dumb and made terrible decisions, but it turned out to be a wonderful night anyways. Um, yeah, these are the songs that will remind you of those nights, those conversations that you had that you'll never forget, the person that you met that maybe you need to call again because you haven't seen him in a while and you heard that song that used to play all the time when you were hanging out. I mean, you can hear Dave Matthews Band on a lot of different channels, but you're not going to hear that followed up with Death Cab for Cutie very often, for example.
So yeah, there's that. There's the eclectic mix of the music that we play, and I'll throw in some college jams also that, I played on college radio back in the day, XTC and early Elvis Costello and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you got to have some of that stuff because, again, that's the foundation of all things that are alternative. I mean, Elvis Costello was a provocateur. That's why he's named Elvis Costello. He was told that the name that he was given at birth wasn't cool enough for radio, and they said you need to change it. And he's like, "Fine, call me Elvis." Like that's being a thorn in someone's side is at a record label, and I don't hate that for him. I think that was a really a clever way to look at it. But from there to the Ramones, from the Ramones to REM, from REM to U2, which started out as a protest band. I mean, there's a pathway to where grunge happens. A lot of people are like, well, it was hair metal, hair metal, hair metal, and then all of a sudden grunge, then
Nirvana.
Smells Like Teen Spirit shows up, and it's just not how it was. There was always an underground. If you go back to one of my favorite records is Thomas Dolby's Golden Age of Wireless. And everyone knows She Blinded Me with Science. You can hear that all the time. If you go to a trivia and somebody shouts out that the category is science, everyone does this bit. But if you go back and you listen to that, it is a Cold War era protest album. And it has some brilliant songs on there, like One of Our Submarines. I mean, so when we put these track lists together, yeah, you're going to listen and you'll hear Toto's Africa sometimes, or some goofy pop songs from Destiny's Child. But you're also going to hear like just like digital. I'm just in the D's, by the way. I'm scrolling through my CD collection, and we have the Diggable Planets, which is just a smooth jazz-based hip hop, and it is fantastic. And so when you hear cool like that, and we were playing those back in the day, it reminds you that the music of the 90s and the 80s wasn't all neon, and 90s wasn't all grunge. And we are able to span a lot of different genres by making sure that we're telling the story of our radio travels with this CD collection, which I think is really fun.
You'll hear it on the Fizz Radio. By the way, the FizzRadio.com. Also on the Live 365 app. We're also on Radio Line and a bunch of other directories that you can visit online and hear the Fizz Radio. Visit the website, and there is a Ways to Listen page. You can click that link. Find out all kinds of ways to listen.
Don't forget to ask your Alexa to play the Fizz Radio, because then you can take it with you in whatever room you're in.
Yeah, one of the questions I get a lot is, we've got all this music in. How are we handling music licensing? The artists need to get paid, and I don't know how familiar many of the Fizz fans are about sort of the boring legalities of the music biz. But, when I was in commercial radio, one of the things that we had to do was keep track of what we played so that we could submit it to the record companies and the licensing agencies and things like that, ASCAP, BMI, places like that, and paid them royalties. And that's how the musicians and the artists get paid. The Fizz is no different. We do the same thing. We do it through our hosting with our hosting company that provides the digital streaming across the internet for us. But, that stuff costs money. And, this is a passion project. We're not in it for, a career or anything like that. But if you'd like to help out, hit the donate button on the website, thefizzradio.com. And
We are both in the negative for this, but we do it because we love this. Neither of us are getting paid to have
Hey,
this radio station up and running, but boy, oh boy, do we want to do it anyways, because it's our opportunity to share this music that we love.
sure, it's a some guys have a hot rod in their garage. We've got a radio station. What are you gonna do?
That's it. And so it gives us the opportunity to relive those experiences that we had when we had control, when we had the ability to make decisions over what our programming was going to look like and what it was going to sound like. And so it feels authentic. And when you listen to it, it feels like you're listening to somebody's CD collection, because if you put so I listen to XM. I think we all can say there's a lot of great reasons to listen to XM radio from time to time. And their 90s station, they have the 5-disc carousel, right? Your 5-disc changer. Let's see what's in the 5-disc changer. As a Radio Shack grad, I sold my dad his very first 99 CD carousel. That's the big,
Hardcore.
gigantic monster. And so really what you're doing is you're hitting a huge variety of things, because we're not beholden to XM radios, like playlists that keep people on because the algorithm is telling them that these are the songs that people like. We're playing stuff that we're like, I bet you remember this song. I'll bet you if you don't remember this song, you'll be like, I feel like I've heard it somewhere before. And even if you haven't heard it somewhere before,
We're
it's
gonna
going
like
to
it
bring you back.
anyway.
You're gonna like it anyway. And that's I think when radio is most fun for the DJs, for the jocks, is when we get to be excited about the music and introducing our listeners to it.
So another question I get a lot is, how do you do this radio stuff? The Fizz is automated. I am never live. We've recorded a bunch of voice tracks, and that's what you hear. And the software that we use to run the music and intersperse the jingles and the DJ breaks and things like that does a remarkable job of making the Fizz sound like a real radio station that you would hear if you tuned in the dial or had listened back in the day. And we're just having a ton of fun doing this. It sounds like radio, and we're able to control it. It's pretty cool. Andrew, like you said, this is what it would have sounded like if we didn't have anybody to report to. And it's just a bunch of fun.
We weren't beholden to record companies, and we weren't beholden to advertisers that tell us what we can and can't play. And because it's internet radio, we're not even beholden to the FCC. So we can play things in their original album format, the album cut, not the safe for work cut. So forgive us if you have to put your earphones in when you're listening to it at work, but do that anyways. It's just a great experience to hear things in proper stereo sound and keep your head down while you're working and still have a tap in your step when you get going. So.
Oh, and listen, you mentioned XM radio, there's Spotify and anything you can find on YouTube. Let's face it, if it's music you want, you can find the music anywhere. The internet is no shortage of, anything you want to find, you can find it. I think what makes the Fizz different and something that's, worth hanging out with us for a little while is the stuff that comes in between the songs. Yes, it's the mix of music. It's the songs that we play together. And, you're listening to Hurricane Andrew's massive CD collection that we've mined and sort of gotten into your head. You sort of invited us in, right, to listen to your kind of what was going through your mind when you purchased these CDs in the first place. But it's also what happens in between the songs. It's the J.Y. Kelley DJ breaks, the sort of the fun little quips and features and the jingles that that sort of makes it fun to listen to.
It's very classic 80s, 90s FM radio. It really does feel like you're listening to your favorite station back at home, and that's what we were aiming for. I think when we first sat down to talk about maybe putting together a station, we were at a local restaurant, Ernie's Midtown Pub. Good place, by the way. Great burgers. Go there if you're in the city of Rockford. We were just talking about what would we want to do, and you brought this idea to me, and you said, I want to run a radio station. What would you be interested in helping me with that? And without hesitation, I said, absolutely yes. And here's what I have to bring to the table. And I'm so glad that you asked me, because, I think that you've brought a personality and a style to the station that meets the sound of the station, which is the CD collection, and the choices that we've made out of that collection of what to put in our rotation, that just makes it feel nostalgic, but nostalgic for something that didn't exist, right? Like, none of this is so specifically targeted to the people who are our age who love this music, whether it's our wives, our friends, but also it can be a lesson to the next generation of how we got to the music we're at now, because it all takes this journey. It didn't manifest out of thin air, right? We've got the history of great pop music there. If you're listening to the Beastie Boys, like, you're going to hear songs that influence today's hip hop. You're going to hear like record tracks that you might have seen on TikTok, but you'll hear the whole song when you listen to it on the Fizz.
You talk about an interesting mix. I heard Jimi Hendrix this morning into MC Hammer.
That's like,
and then Barbie Girl. Wow.
well, it's like I'll hear Fiona Apple, and I'm like, God, her voice is amazing. And she only ever pops up once every like 2-3 years with a brand new album, and it's all amazing and everyone loves it, and then disappears. And there's a reason we need to revisit some of these artists, because they're still viable. They're still making incredibly good music. And sometimes you just need to hear Criminal to remind yourself, oh, I need to go back and listen to some Fiona Apple. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of treasure to be found at the Fizz, which I think is really fun.
It's good stuff. It's a ton of fun. We really enjoy, sort of playing DJ again. Like I said, I haven't been on the air in 35 years. I guess it wasn't beaten out of me back then, so I had to start again, just with a passion project that was fun to do. TheFizzRadio.com is the website. Help us out. Hit the donate button. Subscribe. Make a donation. If you'd like to get some Fizz T-shirts or coffee cup with the fancy Fizz logo,
Good.
Available on the website as well. You mentioned the socials. We're on Facebook and Instagram at the FIZZ Radio. We post often, and another way you can help us out, comment on the posts. Share them on your own social channels. And that tells the algorithms that there's actually somebody out there.
The usual good stuff that you would do. And hey, if you've got any recommendations or requests, I can't promise you I'll get them on right away, but we can certainly start looking for some of those songs that you would like us to play a little bit more.
Songs, ideas for programs, or little features that we might do. Maybe there's a game that you'd like to hear, or a contest or something that we could try to figure out how to do it. This is sort of an experience for all of us. And so really appreciate it.
For sure. Hey, again, I just want to say thank you very much, my good friend JY, for bringing me into this project and let me be a part of this. I've been excited about it since we got going. I listen to it every day. It is just so much fun, not knowing what's going to come next, because it really is. It is a wide roulette of songs that could, at any moment in time, just pop up on the radio, and I kind of love that.
Well, that's all your music. It's it should not be unfamiliar to you.
It's
But
true.
I back at you, man, because your huge CD collection was the backbone for getting this thing started. Without it, it wouldn't have happened. So yeah, really appreciate that, and we'll get you on the air with your own show here soon.
Yeah, I've got some stuff in the works. Like I said, I need to get some shelves and dust off the old CDs and make sure this microphone is up and running properly. And yeah, you'll hear me on the Fizz soon. I promise. I'll be working for it.
If you're enjoying the Fizz Radio, we really appreciate you listening. Tell your friends about it. It's thefizzradio.com. We're on the Live 365 app. You can hit us at several different places around the internet. Yeah, share the word, spread the word. If you are of a certain age that loved the music and kind of grew up at the end of the millennium, it'll feel familiar to you, and it'll be a little bit of a twist on maybe what you remember, but it's a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of fun doing it.
But in the meantime, thank you again for inviting me to be a part of this. This has been a blast.